As the Palaces Burn, which is the documentary about Lamb of God, if you remember, there was a discussion about Lamb of God some time ago. I mean, you and I were trying to figure out what metal, groove metal, thrash metal, all that sort of stuff sounded like. Just to remind you, this is what Lamb of God sound like. So
I quite like that.
And then yes, but then the singing over the top. So here's the thing with As the Palaces Burn, which I knew nothing about going into it other than that we talked about Lamb of God on the programme. So it starts out as a kind of as a sort of fairly straightforward rockumentary. The deal being that they're one of those bands that they don't get airplay, but they're sort of they've got a very heavy fan base following, and they're going off on a world tour, and it's going to be a documentary that to some extent is going to sort of centre on their fans. And then what happens completely unexpectedly is they arrive in the Czech Republic, and the lead singer is arrested and charged with manslaughter in relation to the death of a fan at a concert 2 years earlier. And this, obviously, nobody who was, involved in making the documentary had any idea that things were going to take this tragic turn of events. And he's held in prison for 38 days, something like that. Then he returns to America, and then he goes back to Prague to stand trial. And the film goes from being, at the beginning, a kind of Spinal Tap-esque, documentary about, bands in dressing rooms and concert footage and all that kind of thing, to being this sort of, strange and tragic and actually fairly intimate courtroom drama. And the thing about it is, I mean, I didn't know much about the documentary beforehand. I'm sure that, the fans of the band will be familiar with this story. It's a tragic tale. There's no two ways about it. But what's impressive is that the members of the band, particularly the singer who was, placed in this position being charged, all seem to want to shoulder whatever responsibility there may be, and they behave themselves very well. And I mean, now clearly this is it's a documentary that is approved by the band, and it has the sort of the band's endorsement. But it's one that often when people play this kind of music, people imagine the worst things about them. People who make that kind of music, that's always the case. But actually, what happens is that he reacts very well to this terrible thing. He understands what an awful thing it is that one of their fans has died, that it's been a tragedy, that there's no happy outcome of this at all, but he needs to stand up and be accountable. So it was an interesting documentary. I think they come out of it very well. As I said, obviously it is it's an approved product, but it was it wasn't a story that I knew anything about, and it was clearly something which caught the documentary filmmakers on the hop. And did that standard thing about people who make this kind of music actually behaving in a way which is very respectful of the situation and taking responsibility for for being accountable.